is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on AFR Talk.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point. AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Just closing the loop for just a moment back on the Chris McDaniel thing. Chris McDaniel, by the way, quoted yesterday as saying many conservatives don't feel welcome in the Republican Party, end quote, anymore. He said, now the conservative movement is alive in Mississippi. The Republicans who voted last night, he said this yesterday, made it clear they're looking for conservative change in Mississippi, but the results also tell another story. They tell the story of some members of our party who are willing to engage in tactics unbecoming of the party of Ronald Reagan. It's no wonder so many conservatives don't feel welcome in the Republican Party. Now, I mentioned that there is one legal issue. There's a filing date if you want to run as an independent. There's a filing date, and that filing date has passed. So apparently there would be some legal issue about whether Chris McDaniel himself could start a campaign, an official campaign at this point, and run as an independent. So I don't know the legal ins and outs of all of that. So there may be some limitations on what Chris McDaniel would be able to do officially and formally, but obviously there's absolutely nothing to stop grassroots Mississippians from starting a write-in effort on his behalf. So we'll see how all of that shakes out. Now let's talk about the situation in Iraq just for a moment. Number to call if you want to join our program, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840 is the number. This is clip number 2, and we're talking here about what's going on in Iraq. We've had the story where ISIS, the ISIS, we trained these guys in Jordan, some of these guys. We have Americans now that are fighting with these guys. They have American passports. They are from America. Just had a story, another 15 to 20 Somalis from Minnesota flying to Syria to be a part of this ISIS effort. We trained them. We've got Americans fighting with them, fighting for them. They are using weapons and so forth that we supplied to them when they were in Syria. This is the same batch. The rebels that we supported in Syria, we're now trying to stop in Baghdad. That's why this thing is just such a horrible mess, and I believe we just ought to stay out of there, let them duke it out, and hope they both lose, as Henry Kissinger said. So anyway, it's just a complete, utter disaster over there. There's no other way to slice it. I think Jordan, there's rumors today that they're going to invade Lebanon. Every part of the Middle East now is vulnerable, and this is the new face of al-Qaeda. When you see ISIS, you just think al-Qaeda. These guys are so radical that al-Qaeda first threw them out of al-Qaeda. Now they're saying, you know, we like what you guys are doing. We're going to join up with you. Then now they're all part of the same team. This is just al-Qaeda. That's what ISIS is. It is al-Qaeda. So Ralph Peters, a military expert for Fox News, on with Megyn Kelly last night, talking about the deficiencies here in leadership from President Obama. Let's listen.
The White House is lying. This president is a coward. He won't make tough decisions to defend America. And, you know, it's just at some point, yes, it's a hard decision. Presidents are supposed to make hard decisions. Bush was derided for saying, I'm the decider. But, Megyn, that's what a president is. And I am not for willy-nilly foreign interventions everywhere in the world. But when you see the emergence of an al-Qaeda offshoot terrorist state in the heart of the Middle East that threatens our interests and will threaten Americans, and our president does nothing whatsoever except send those 300 advisors, some of whom are in Baghdad, probably safe, some of whom are in Erbil up in the Kurdish areas, they'll be safe, but they're brave guys, they're special operators. But those guys, when we send them out in teams on the ground, the one thing they could do is help call in airstrikes, but the Iraqis will not defend them. They don't have the numbers and strength to defend themselves. And mark my words, if ISIS were able to grab one or several of our special operators, and they will try, if they were able to, our guys aren't going to get the gentle treatment Bergdahl got from the Taliban. ISIS will go for beheading videos as recruiting tools.
You don't even want to
the whole thing's a
that.
mess.
So that's what Ralph Peters is saying. Look, President Obama sending 300 of our soldiers over there. And here's a lengthy story, by the way, about the uncovery I won't take time to go through it, but ISIS or Al-Qaeda now coming across Saddam Hussein's chemical weapons facility. So there were, in fact, weapons of mass destruction. They're now in the hands of ISIS. And everybody's saying, oh, these weapons, they are antiquated. They've probably degraded. You couldn't really use them. They're not in a position where you could make any military use out of them. But experts are telling these guys, look, don't go in there. Don't go in there. This stuff is too volatile. You could wind up hosing yourself. You could wind up gassing yourself. Don't go in there because this stuff is so volatile. So they're saying, on the one hand, it's all degraded, can't use it. Now they're saying, if you value your life, do not go in there. So the weapons of Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction have, in fact, been found. The chemical weapons depository, it has been found. The bunker where this stuff is being held is found. Let me see just a couple of excerpts from this to give you an idea. This is less than 50 miles from Baghdad. Stockpiles of chemical munitions are stored there. The most dangerous ones have been declared to the UN, are sealed in bunkers. These areas of compound pose a hazard to civilians and potential black marketers. Another report paints an even more disturbing picture of the Muthana facility. It warned that the number and status of Saddam's sarin-filled rockets was unknown because facilities were not able to be inspected, leaving investigators only able to surmise about the weapon's conditions. Even in degraded conditions, these rockets, the report said, pose a proliferation risk. Quote, although the damaged Bunker 13 at Muthana contained thousands of sarin-filled rockets, the presence of leaking munitions and unstable propellant and explosive charges made it too hazardous for UNSCOM, UN-SCOM inspectors to enter. Because the rockets could not be recovered safely, Iraq declared the munitions in Bunker 13 as destroyed in the Gulf War, and they were not included in the inventory of chemical weapons eliminated under UN supervision. So Iraq tried to pretend these things were not there. They said we don't have them. They were, in fact, destroyed in the Gulf War. They weren't. They're sitting right there in that bunker. Because of the hazardous conditions in Bunker 13, UN inspectors were unable to make an accurate inventory of its contents before sealing the entrances. In the worst-case scenario, the missions could contain as much as 15,000 liters of sarin gas. So weapons of mass destruction do exist and are now in the hands of Al-Qaeda. You know, one other comment on the Islamic front, just to give you an update on Miriam Ibrahim. We have been praying for her and her condition. We still have Saeed Abedini in an Iranian prison being beaten, taken out of the hospital, beaten up, thrown back in prison. His condition we're not certain of, but it's not good. And now we have conflicting stories about the situation of Sudanese Christian Miriam Ibrahim. Here's an AP story. A Sudanese Christian woman whose death sentence for apostasy was overturned was ordered freed again on Thursday after being detained on accusations of forging travel documents. The lawyer for Miriam Ibrahim told the Associated Press that she had been released from a police station after foreign diplomats pressed the government to free her. But a lawyer at the police station in Khartoum, Mohamed Mustafa, said Ibrahim was still inside but would be released after completing paperwork and posting bail. It's a very fluid situation, and the State Department could not confirm either report. So here's a piece from The Blaze, Billy Hollowell, saying that she is still in police custody. This was an aide from a congressman said this, that her attorneys are still working on a bail agreement, but at least one effort to secure her release failed earlier this week. Her family's with her, got her husband and her children are there with her. She does not appear to have been formally charged yet. She was picked up at the airport by National Intelligence and Security Services. This is a government body that doesn't have to go to court for stuff. They've got sweeping authorities to arrest and detain folks indefinitely, so that is not a good sign. Now, there's one other issue. I want to grab clip number 4, have that one ready to go if we can. Play this quickly before the end of the break. Congress has passed a new law. They passed it. It's not signed into law yet, But Congress, the House of Representatives, has renamed a street outside the Chinese embassy in Washington, D.C., after a Democratic protester, a guy that's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. See if I can find that story about him. I don't know what I did with that. I got that around here somewhere. But, and I wanted to get his name. It's Liu Xiaoping, I think, something like that. I'm going from memory here since I don't have the story right in front of me. But he won a Nobel Peace Prize. He led the Democratic uprising in 1979. So he's a hero to the Democratic movement, to the freedom movement. He was a part of that whole Tiananmen Square effort. He has been detained repeatedly by the Chinese government. And now the Congress, the House of Representatives, renamed the street in front of the Chinese embassy in Washington, D.C. after the name of this guy. They want to rename it, and that's under it's in federal property, so the federal government has the right to decide what name this thing is going to have. And they've done this before. They named a street in honor of Nelson and Winnie Mandela right in front of the South African embassy back at the time, and they've done this in one or two other cases. So here's Matt Lee. This is not enough time. Yeah, it's a 2-minute clip in it. I'll have to save this. I'll set this up, and we'll play it coming out of the break. But Matt Lee from the Associated Press asks Marie Harf, she's a spokesman for the State Department, and there's a couple of reasons I want you to listen to this soundbite because it illustrates something we've said about the people that Barack Obama has hired to be spokesmen and to be in top and visible positions in his administration. This Marie Harf, she's supposed to be the spokesman for the State Department. She's representing the United States government when she's responding to questions from Associated Press like Matt Lee. And, you'll hear Matt Lee kind of asking her, what's the deal here? What is the State Department's response to what Congress is doing here, to what the House of Representatives is doing? It's a good question. It is a legitimate question because the Chinese are ticked off. This is like a thumb in the eye of the Chinese government because they're not about liberty. They're not about freedom of speech. So they resent the fact that this has happened. And so it's perfectly natural for the press to ask the spokesman for the State Department, what is the State Department's position on this? And we'll play that soundbite for you when we get back. Bad news for Hillary Clinton by the way. The second week of her book, Hard Choices, sales have dropped 43% in the second week. Not good. She's now in 15th place on Amazon. Remember, she was behind that green tea something cleansing or other. Now she's in 15th place. Focal Point, AFR Talk.